Before we start, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is the verbatim federal courtroom testimony of the Sean Diddy Combs trial as reported by Inner City Press.
He's still in kind of those muted colors. He's still wearing sweaters. He still has white button-ups underneath. He still wears the slacks. Of course, he can't have a belt or have shoelaces tied to his shoes or anything like that. But as far as today's appearance goes, today Diddy was in the gray sweater, white undershirt, and gray slacks. When he comes inside the courtroom, more often than not, he's hugging his attorneys. He's kind of doing like a hand clap with them, dabbing them up, that type of thing. Then he goes over to the defense table. He essentially takes his seat. Then he's starting to kind of essentially get to work, where he's writing down notes to his attorneys. He's speaking with them, more likely to talk about what's going to be happening today and that type of thing. But as far as just who's in the courtroom, it's still a different presence than it was on the first couple of days of trial. In that today specifically, we didn't see his sons, we didn't see his daughters inside the courtroom, nor did we see his mother. However, he did have family in there, and that was, of course, being his sister Keisha, who's been in the courtroom every single day of this week. But as far as other support goes, he did have one of his childhood friends inside that courtroom too, and then possibly some of the public who are just generally fans of Diddy. The other day, I actually saw somebody in the gallery who was sitting kind of towards the back row on the public side, giving Diddy kind of a heart, and then Diddy gave the heart back because he also sometimes goes by love. And so I think he kind of appreciates the public support when he's inside the courtroom, but for the most part, he's essentially getting inside that courtroom, getting to work, and anticipating what's going to be coming of another day of trial.
The courtroom has been on fire this week. And no, that's not an exaggeration. Testimony after testimony came crashing down against Diddy, each one more intense than the last. Secrets spilled, emotions ran high, and the tension? You could feel it through the walls. From shocking allegations to moments that left even the judge speechless, this is the week everything started to unravel. It's been a dramatic week in the trial of music icon Sean Diddy Combs. Once a symbol of power and luxury, Diddy is now facing a wave of accusations that are shaking the courtroom to its core. As witnesses step forward one by one, their stories are painting a picture no one expected. Raw, emotional, and deeply disturbing. There were gasps, tears, and moments where even the legal teams looked caught off guard. Each new testimony is adding more heat to an already blazing case, and fans are left wondering, how much more is still hidden? You could hear a pin drop when Dawn Richard stepped up to the stand. Once known for her glittering rise in the girl group Danity Kane, she now stood as a key witness with a story that rocked the courtroom. Dawn wasn't just speaking for herself. She was speaking for the countless people who had stayed silent for years. Her voice trembled, but her words were clear. He told us, where I'm from, people go missing. That moment? The jury leaned forward. Reporters scribbled notes. Even Diddy himself, sitting still and stone-faced, couldn't stop the shift in the room. This wasn't a vague accusation. Dawn described specific events, naming names, places, even emotions she felt in those moments. Shock, fear, and disbelief.
All about the star witness, Cassie Ventura, star victim, I should say. She's victim number one in that government indictment. But the testimony from Dawn Richard was meant to corroborate some of Cassie's abuse. And part of that corroboration was an incident that she testified about when Diddy actually, she alleged, hit Cassie with a skillet. She was making eggs. He got, enraged and hit her with a skillet. Now, she also testified that thereafter, Diddy told her that people who spoke about these types of things tend to disappear, and that she took that as a threat on her life. The defense attorneys, rightfully so, objected to a lot of this testimony, saying much of it was hearsay. In trials, there are very strict rules of evidence. The judge is concerned that a lot of these now corroborating witnesses may be veering into hearsay gossip. You only want witnesses to testify, and they're only allowed to testify to things that they directly saw or heard. So that's part of this objection, as well as this statement that Diddy apparently made to her. We're already seeing the defense today really try to get into those inconsistencies in Richard's testimony about whether did she actually witness this abuse or did she just see perhaps the aftermath of it. So that's kind of the issue here. The issue is the scope of the testimony. It does seem that the judge is going to allow that testimony to stand on Friday, but going into more of this testimony today, there may be a sort of a tighter scope around what they can testify to.
The audience in the overflow room audibly reacted. Social media lit up. For years, Dawn had stayed professional, quiet, loyal. But now, her testimony kicked off what would become one of the most intense legal showdowns in celebrity history. And this was just the beginning. It was supposed to be just another night in the studio, beats playing, voices warming up. But what Dawn Richard witnessed that night would change everything. She described an argument between Diddy and Cassie that escalated fast. What started as a disagreement ended with a flying skillet, a shocked silence, and Cassie looking hurt and frightened. The next day, Diddy arrived with flowers for the group. A peace offering? Maybe. But what followed made it unforgettable. According to Dawn, he leaned in and warned, "Don't say anything. Where I'm from, people go missing." It wasn't just a threat, it was a reminder of who was in control. The prosecution used this moment to paint a picture of power and pressure. It wasn't just about fame or music. This was about silence and how it was bought, forced, or feared. Viewers online started calling it the Skillet Incident. But in court, it became something much deeper. An early sign that the stories coming out wouldn't be ordinary. They'd be personal, they'd be powerful, and they'd be impossible to ignore. In a world of flashing lights and red carpets, not everything is as it seems. One photo, just one, helped the courtroom understand what words alone couldn't explain. Cassie, Dawn, and Keena Harper standing together at a Central Park concert. All of them smiling, all of them wearing sunglasses. But those glasses? According to Dawn, they weren't just for style. They were to hide the swelling, the bruising, the aftermath. That day, Cassie had been hit, said Dawn. She was crying in a bathroom just minutes before going on stage. And when she stepped out, makeup on, glasses on, smile on. Dawn's testimony made it clear. This wasn't just one moment. It was a routine, a pattern, one where performance came before pain. That exhibit photo became a turning point in the trial. It showed the jury that some things can't be hidden forever. Not with makeup, not with glasses, and definitely not in a courtroom full of eyes finally watching closely. This next testimony sounded almost unbelievable. Until it wasn't. A man known as the Punisher took the stand. No, not a comic book character. An exotic dancer who got a strange call in 2012. A woman invited him to Trump Tower. Said it was a birthday surprise. Just a dance. Quick money. But when he arrived, the story changed. There were no birthday balloons. No crowd. Just one woman. And later, a man silently watching from the shadows. According to the witness, the scene was arranged. Baby oil, sheets over furniture, a fantasy playing out, and it didn't feel random. He said he followed the rules, said nothing, did what was asked, and left with more money than expected. But here's the twist. The woman was Cassie. And that silent figure? The dancer later realized it was Diddy. The jury sat still, processing every word. Because what was being described wasn't just strange, it sounded planned, carefully choreographed. Like something that had happened more than once. It wasn't just about a power on stage, it was power over people. Multiple witnesses shared the same pattern. If Diddy wanted to reach you, he would. Even if you didn't pick up. He'd call again, and again, and again. Dawn Richard described how his assistants would keep dialing. If you didn't answer, they would. Emails, texts, pressure. She wasn't alone. Former employees said he had control over schedules, whereabouts, even relationships. Cassie herself had testified that silence wasn't just expected. It was enforced. There was no off button when it came to him. Even after people left his team, the calls didn't stop. The connection stayed. The prosecution said it showed a pattern of influence, one that went beyond business. This was personal, strategic, persistent. Fans watching the trial online started calling it the circle. Because once you were in, getting out wasn't easy. And this was just one of many patterns that would unfold as the trial pressed on. If there was one moment that pulled heartstrings across the courtroom, it was this. Cassie's mother, Regina Ventura, took the stand with a calm strength that silenced the gallery. She recounted a Christmas that no mother should ever experience. Cassie had reached out, terrified. Diddy, she said, had threatened to leak explicit videos, unless money was sent. So what did Regina do? She took out a $20,000 home equity loan. Yes, she borrowed against her own home to protect her daughter from humiliation and fear. The courtroom held its breath. She wired the money to Bad Boy Records. Days later, the check was returned. No apology, no message, nothing. The prosecution used this moment to emphasize control, not just over Cassie, but over her family. The threat wasn't just professional, it was personal. For YouTube viewers, this was one of those pause and rewind moments. A mother literally paying a ransom in silence, not for release, but for mercy. And as Regina finished her testimony, a quiet tear slipped down her cheek, but her voice? Unshaken. They say loyalty is priceless. But in this courtroom, it had a cost. Dawn Richard spoke about a moment backstage, a time when she and fellow artist Kina Harper tried to support Cassie. All they did was speak to her. But for Diddy, that was too much. He exploded. "You don't know real work, motherfucker!" he allegedly shouted at them, words that echoed in the courtroom like a firecracker. This wasn't a private argument, it was a public outburst. Witnessed, felt, remembered. Prosecutors pointed to this moment as proof. Diddy didn't just demand loyalty, he enforced it. Even emotional support for Cassie was seen as betrayal. Dawn said she stayed quiet after that. Scared, not just for herself, but for what stepping out of line could mean. She wasn't just an artist anymore, she was a witness to a world behind the fame. This section drew strong reactions online. Clips of reenactments flooded TikTok. People began using the phrase real work with a whole new meaning. Now we move to the moment that stopped the trial in its tracks. The car fire. Kid Cudi took the stand in a leather jacket, casual, calm, but focused. He testified that after his brief relationship with Cassie, something strange happened. First came the texts, then the break-in, then the explosion. His Porsche, parked in his driveway, was firebombed. The flames gutted the vehicle. The roof melted. And nearby, a burnt bottle. Kid Cudi never pointed a finger directly, but he didn't have to. "I think he was sending a message," he said. The courtroom buzzed. Viewers around the world gasped. This wasn't music beef, this was real life, with real danger. The prosecution listed arson among its racketeering claims. And this event? It became their centerpiece. It wasn't just about destruction. It was about, and with it, the illusion that celebrity beefs stay online. This one's not easy to forget. George Kaplan, Diddy's former assistant, described a flight that should have been first class in every way. Private jet, A-list passengers, everything polished. Until everything changed. Kaplan said he heard a crash, then a scream. When he turned, Cassie was on the floor, Diddy towering above her, holding a glass. Nobody moved. Cassie, according to testimony, looked around the cabin and said, "Isn't anyone seeing this?" No one responded. The silence was louder than any shout, and then came the line, "Stay in the back of the plane, Cassie." That wasn't just a seat assignment. That was a metaphor for what this case is all about. Power, positioning, and silence. Kaplan admitted he didn't help. "I was young. I thought I had my dream job," he said, but that moment stuck with him. And when he took the stand, he made sure it stuck with the jury too. Now, we revisit one of the strangest moments in the entire trial, one that left jurors with more questions than answers. The man who testified used the stage name, The Punisher. He was a professional dancer, hired, he thought, for a fun gig, a standard party. But when he arrived at Trump Tower, it wasn't a crowd that greeted him. It was Cassie, alone, wearing a wig, calm, quiet. She handed him cash, asked him to pour baby oil. The room was dark, furniture covered, and then a man stepped out, silent, nude, face hidden. The dancer followed instructions, but something felt off. Later, he realized that man was Diddy. This testimony shocked everyone. It wasn't just suggestive, it hinted at a pattern. control, arrangement, a lifestyle that blurred boundaries and consent. And this wasn't a one-time thing. He said he was contacted again and again. This wasn't a party, it was a performance. And the audience, chose to stay unseen. What do you pack for a night out? If you were on Diddy's staff, the list was unlike anything you'd expect. Former assistant George Kaplan took the stand and described hotel setups that sounded more like movie sets. The essentials? Designer candles, bottles of liquor, baby oil, Astroglide, and always a Louis Vuitton pouch. Inside that pouch, according to Kaplan, drugs, MDMA, weed, even Plan B. Kaplan said he used a corporate credit card to purchase everything. He was instructed to set up hotel rooms in LA, Miami, and New York, sometimes under fake names like Frank Black, sometimes with little notice. And it wasn't just the items that raised eyebrows. Kaplan testified he'd seen Diddy carry a handgun tucked in his waistband, at the studio, at clubs, even during travel. Security guards carried firearms too, but the pouch? That was Diddy's personal vault. For prosecutors, this was key. It wasn't about luxury. It was about logistics. A system. A pattern. A lifestyle built to function like an underground empire, hidden in plain sight. Birthday parties are meant to be joyful. But in this trial, Cassie's 30th became a turning point. Her mother, Regina Ventura, said she flew to Los Angeles to celebrate. But the celebration took a sharp turn. Cassie told her Diddy had taken her phone. Frustrated, Regina called the police. A tense confrontation followed outside Cassie's building. Regina said she even tried to strike Diddy in a fit of panic. Eventually, the phone was returned. But then, Diddy took Cassie's car instead. No words, no explanation, just gone. Regina told the court it was a pattern. If Cassie pushed back, things were taken away. Her phone, her car, her peace. Prosecutors used this incident to show how control wasn't just emotional. It was material. Diddy allegedly knew how to hit where it hurt without leaving a mark. Regina's calm voice and motherly instinct brought tears to the gallery. For many viewers, this wasn't just about Cassie anymore. It was about every woman who's ever been made to feel powerless in her own space. This wasn't hearsay. This was personal. Kid Cudi described the day he realized someone had been inside his house, not metaphorically, physically. He testified that after his relationship with Cassie went public, things got strange. Cameras outside his house had been turned, angled away from the front gate. His dog, normally relaxed, was suddenly shaken. And gifts on the counter? Unwrapped. Then came the phone call from inside the house. Cudi said it was Diddy calmly saying, "I just want to talk." It wasn't a surprise visit. It felt like a message. Capricorn Clark, a mutual friend, reportedly admitted she'd been there with Diddy and another associate, but no one explained how or why. The prosecution called it intimidation. The defense called it coincidence. But for Cudi, it was a breach. A line crossed. The courtroom listened closely, and fans watching online had one question: how did we never know? George Kaplan thought he had the best job in the world, front row access to the lifestyle of the rich and famous. But on one flight to Vegas, everything changed. He heard shouting. Glass. A scream. He looked back and saw Cassie on the floor, Diddy towering above her. Kaplan froze. Cassie reportedly cried out, "Isn't anyone seeing this?"
All right, let's jump the map now to New York, where rapper Kid Cudi, whose legal name is Scott Nascuti, just finished testifying in the sex trafficking trial of Sean Diddy Combs. CBS News legal reporter Katrina Kaufman reports from outside that courthouse on what he told the jurors about his relationship with Combs and his ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura.
Rapper Kid Cudi testified today about two incidents that he alleges involved Sean Combs. One was a break-in that happened at his house. This was right after Cassie Ventura said that Combs had found out she and Kid Cudi were seeing each other. There was later an incident where his car caught on fire. A Molotov cocktail was thrown into his Porsche. Combs has denied taking part in that incident, but Kid Cudi said that at the time he realized that they needed to talk. He had ended his relationship with Cassie Ventura, but they all met at the Soho house, made amends. Cudi asked him about the car at the time, and Combs denied knowing anything about it, but Kid Cudi did say that years later, Combs apologized to him. We also heard from a former personal assistant of Combs George Kaplan, who did not want to take the stand today. He made that clear to the jury. He said that he likes Combs and only came because he was subpoenaed. But he left his employment with Combs Enterprise after seeing a couple violent incidents, one involving Cassie Ventura on Combs' private jet, and another where he said Combs was throwing green apples at another girlfriend, Gina. He said that he just didn't feel that he could be around this type of violence and decided that was the last straw, and he had to leave a job that at the time he said was the most incredible experience he'd ever had. We're also hearing from a former makeup artist to Sean Combs and Cassie Ventura today, who has also publicly said that she witnessed Combs assaulting Ventura. Back to you.
Everyone saw. No one moved. Later, Diddy told her to stay in the back of the plane. And Kaplan? He was ordered to bring her to the club that same night, like nothing had happened. He also recalled another time in a hotel room. Cassie crying, a bruise above her eye, Diddy asking for ointment to cover it. Kaplan said he didn't speak up back then because he was young, hopeful, and scared of losing everything. But on the stand, he finally said what he'd seen. This wasn't just testimony, it was a confession of silence, and for the jury, it added a new layer. The people who stood by quietly, and why. It happened years later. A random encounter, a few casual words. Kid Cudi told the court that one day, at Soho House, he ran into Diddy. This time, there was no tension, no threat, just Diddy with his daughters. And then, as Cudi recalled, Diddy said it. "I'm sorry for everything." He didn't specify. No detailed apology, no direct acknowledgement, just those 4 words. But for Cudi, it meant something. A quiet moment, a possible attempt at peace. Years after the fire, the break-in, the silence, the prosecution didn't frame it as a confession, but they said it mattered. Because even a powerful man, when unguarded, might let truth slip in 4 short words. And now, that apology is under the spotlight, dissected by a nation, and forever part of the record.